Hey there guys, it's Metro, and today we are back with another affix discussion. This week we have Raging, Necrotic, and Tyrannical. So Necrotic actually changed again in 7.2, and I'm going to read the changes to you now. Necrotic Rock will now expire after leaving combat. That's a pretty big one. But the duration has also been reduced to 9 seconds. Previously was 10 seconds. There's a developer's note saying, this should eliminate the situations where players were waiting for Necrotic to fall off after killing enemies, and it should give tanks more opportunities for resets while in combat, which makes complete sense. They definitely do not want people standing around after bosses or after mobs die, just like on busting weeks, right? But anyway, I'm glad that they did this. You'll see it in the video. It's pretty cool. I have the debuff obviously shown right above the tracker for the Mythic Plus dungeon, and it just immediately falls off whenever you drop combat. People are talking about great usage as a Night Elf for some reason. I think people are saying that you could drop combat while in combat as a Night Elf. You could shadow meld. I don't know if that's the case, but regardless if that's the case, somebody's got to let me know about that. I don't have a single Night Elf anything really, let alone even a tank that would be able to try this. So, but yeah, how do I feel about the affix? I think it's a lot easier now. The 9-second duration down from 10 is generous. I think 10 really wasn't. I mean, first of all, it's only a 1 second difference, but you'll be surprised how often you could string together dodges and stuff like that to have it drop mid combat. Now, something I don't actually know about this affix, which hopefully some of you guys can tell me about, is what actually prevents it from stacking. Do things like absorbs prevent it? I know dodging, obviously, since the melee is not happening, the way it reads is that anything that you fight, its melee attack will add a stack effectively. So I don't know, if absorbs count. Obviously, when you're immune, you're not gaining stacks. We know that. Paladin, I'm able to bubble off the stacks. I also could have used Blessing of Spell Warding, which I don't have in this video because I wanted to try it with just bubble. I like keeping double horse and all that. So I think it goes fine. Obviously, there's a couple cases where it would be nice to have, but the two tanks that I play the most, which is Paladin and Death Knight, both have great ways to prevent it from stacking, which can, of course, lead to a much easier way to drop it. Like, especially as Death Knight, the extra second being off that is very generous, because then all I have to do is just wait until it gets to about 6 seconds, pop AMS, and whatever stacks I have will drop, which is great. It doesn't really require any kiting at all. Then, of course, other tanks have better ways to deal with it, like just straight kiting, especially Vengeance, Brewmaster, Warrior. All of these have great options there. So I don't really know much about Necrotic, so if you guys do, I would love to hear it. This is an affix that I feel like the more and more I do, the more and more I realize I don't know much about. Sometimes I just see it randomly drop off, and I really don't understand why, even though, it still has a 9-second thing, and we're in combat the whole time. But regardless, the big change here is that it drops off after combat, which is awesome, because you can easily pull like this, right? So previously, if I did this on Necrotic, I would be running the risk of, we'd be waiting a while. But because it just immediately goes away, we delete those mobs in such a way that it basically didn't do anything to me. I got to 22 stacks in a second, and then in the next second, it was all gone. So that's awesome. I think that's a really cool change for Necrotic. As Necrotic is effectively a tank-only mechanic. It's not my favorite things, like we talked about in the previous weeks. A lot of these mechanics were basically only affecting healers. There was almost nothing the damage dealers ever had to worry about. And now this is kind of the opposite. Necrotic was always the week where tanks had to work super hard, and I wasn't a big fan of that. But now that they made these small changes, I think I much prefer the way it is. I think I like the affix a little bit more, and overall, it's a little bit easier to deal with, which, isn't always the best thing, to nerf something like this, but I think it complicated things a lot. So in terms of the actual week, we have Raging and Necrotic, all right, for trash. These, of course, Raging does not affect bosses. Hopefully everyone knows that. So in terms of trash, I think this week is exceptionally easy now. The big problem was, of course, being able to survive the trash and then, not dying to it after it was over when you'd have tons of stacks, but because it immediately goes away, effectively the only thing you have to deal with is when the mob is in the Raging threshold. So, this could be particularly dangerous if you're fighting a large mob like the ones you're seeing here. Raging is going to come up kind of just as I'm getting a lot of stacks in Necrotic. You'll almost never kill things so fast that you only have 2 or 3 stacks in Necrotic, so it's difficult to understand exactly when and where I want to try to prevent Necrotic from damaging me. especially as a Blood Death Knight. I've been using AMS on the pull to prevent stacks, but the more I did the dungeons, the more I realized that that probably wasn't the right choice. What I should have been doing was saving it for the end, because it would also prevent me from taking the damage that Necrotic, the stacks I currently have, would be doing to me. And I think that's way more valuable. You know, if I have 20 stacks, even if I don't actually get them all dropped off, if I use AMS during raging, I won't be taking damage from the actual 20 stacks. I'll just be taking damage from the mob. And even if after AMS is over, I still get a 21st stack, that's still probably better value than actually using it on the pull to prevent 5 seconds of potentially 2 to 3 stacks max. So after that, we really don't have much challenge. Like I said, there's almost nothing complicating the dungeon this week, and I like that a lot. I think raging is one of the better fixes because you really don't have to deal with it if you play the dungeon properly. As long as you don't pull a lot of really dangerous mobs and they all rage at the same time, it's basically not an affix. You should be able to execute things through the raging percentage very easily, to the point where if you're dying to them, especially on this week without fortified, I think you're doing something wrong. So that's the other thing to bring up, that it is tyrannical, okay? And raging does not affect tyrannical. The two do not overlap in any way. But Necrotic and Tyrannical do, and this is a pretty tough combination. This is really where Necrotic gets tough now. You know, previously Trash was just as difficult because you'd constantly either have to wait or stop chain pulling in order to get it to drop off. But now you can kind of just go from pack to pack like a normal dungeon without really any effort at all. But however, the bosses are not in any way easier, really. The 9 second, you know, compared to the 10 seconds is generous, but like I said, it's sometimes they just drop off randomly. Other times they just, you know, it stacks up infinitely, and I just can't seem to get a beat on why it's happening so quickly. But regardless, you are going to have to find some ways to get it to drop off on Tyrannical, just because there's almost no way that the boss is going to die at a time where it's comfortable. So if you don't have a way to actually remove it, like AMS, bubble, spell warding, stuff like that from these tanks, then you're going to have to do a little bit of kiting every probably, you know, maybe minute of the fight. I don't know exactly how, you know, most fights work out, but there's usually a mechanic that the boss's attention is drawn away from you for a few seconds. If you use that to your advantage and use your, you know, whatever speed boost you have, heroic leap, stuff like that to get away, then by the time the boss reaches you again, you should have lost your stacks now that it's only 9 seconds. That should be a lot more comfortable. Realistically, the way it goes is, you know, 9 seconds, 8 seconds, boss turns away, 7, 6, I run away, he targets me again, 5, 4, 3, I keep running, 2, 1, at the last second he catches me, but not enough time to swing, and it's reset. That's the way I found it go this week, so I think that's the way most people will find it. But regardless, I do like this affix again now. I used to hate it. I used to say absolutely no, I would never try to tank anything too hard, because people never seem to understand just how dangerous it was, and especially as blood decay, when your healing's reduced, it was a very tough affix for me. But now that it's basically not anything in Trash, and it's only affected, you know, only 2 affixes are basically up at a time, it can be very fun. I like this affix a lot. I like seeing how I could mitigate it, and, you know, kiting is, you know, every once in a while, kiting is a little fun. I'm looking forward to playing my Vengeance, Demon Hunter, my Prot Warrior, and my Brewmaster, because it's kind of fun to say, I'm just going to kite away, or I'll Heroic Leap, or, you know, Infernal Strike away from these mobs, and then that's it for this debuff. It's really cool. I like it a lot, and I think, you know, having affixes like this in the game that kind of make you play the game a little bit differently than you would is the whole point of the Keystone. So if anybody has any tips for me on Necrotic, please let me know. Like I said, this is by and large the affix that I am the least acquainted with. I know almost nothing about how it actually works, other than the fact that whenever he lands a melee on me, I take a tick, but I don't know things like if it's absorbed, and anything else that like might affect it. So if you guys know anything about that, let me know. That's not really changed in 7.2, I'm sure, but now that it's a lot more approachable for Trash and bosses, I'm a little bit more interested in maximizing my play here. So anyway, thanks for watching. Just a quick little one on Necrotic. From here on out, we're not really going to have new affixes in any way. All of the ones that have changed have been covered now, but I assume we're going to have new combinations of them. So I'm particularly looking forward to chances for new affixes to combine into certain, you know, new challenges that we haven't seen before. So I'll cover that weekly, but otherwise, if this is the last 5-man discussion on affixes, it's been a lot of fun. I'm really happy that 7.2 took the time to change these things. It's actually really neat, right? Because the patch was a big patch as it was, but the fact that it managed to change 5-mans in a way that I'd still be talking about this, 2 months later, is pretty neat. So anyway, thanks for watching. We'll see you guys in the next video.